JayEmm on Cars is sponsored by Car Vertical. With just a registration number, or even better, a VIN, Car Vertical will search over 20 European databases to find out whether any car you're looking at has a hidden past. They can see if a vehicle was used as a taxi, stolen, suffered fire damage, or involved in a crash, even when it wasn't written off, so could pass other checks. Car Vertical is now an essential tool in my car buying kit, putting all the information I need to know together in one easy-to-read report. Even better, if you follow the link in the description down below, you'll get 10% off. A big thank you to them for being today's sponsor.
Hello everybody. For quite some time now, the BMW MINI has been one of my favourite cars that I hate to love, because as much as I might deride it for its faux retro styling and its occasional bit over the top gimmicks, as a thing to get you from A to B with a huge smile on your face, they are pretty hard to beat for the money, and they will quite happily shame much more expensive and exotic machinery on your average British B-road, which is exactly the kind of place that I tend to enjoy my cars. Unfortunately, many of them are now getting to an age, and this means that they're all starting to fall apart and becoming quite expensive to maintain. The first generation supercharged cars are some of my absolute favourites, but unfortunately they were never particularly well made, and now they are really suffering for it. Even the later cars are also now over a decade old and again starting to fall apart. Somehow, up until now, I haven't really driven the third generation BMW MINI. I've come very close and I have had a few brief goes, but never on camera. Thanks to friend of a friend Archie, this has all now changed, and so I'm in his F56 generation Mini John Cooper Works. It's a rather unusual specification too, because he deliberately chose it with the automatic gearbox despite being a self-confessed petrol head, and this car does nearly all of its miles around track. In fact, he ran it in on the way to Knock Hill and just about passed over the crucial mileage on the way there. It's only done about 6,000 miles in its life, but they've nearly all been at 1.3 mile at a time segments. This third generation BMW MINI is quite a departure from those that came before it. On the face of it, it looks very much like the same thing again. However, it was massively bigger than the older cars, meaning you got quite a bit more space in them, always something of an issue. They also got a whole new breed of engines and gearboxes derived from BMW's modular architecture. So this has a B48, just as you'd find in, say, a 230i. Officially, this car has about 230 horsepower, but it's actually dynoed at 240. This has subsequently had a Blue Spark tuning box fitted, which brings the power up to an estimated 280, although no official claims are made for that. The reasoning behind the automatic gearbox is that this was purchased as a track slag, and they didn't want the possibility of absolutely detonating the engine or gearbox thanks to a missed shift. This car has the obligatory modes, and I'm going to be driving it in sport today, but you've also got mid and you've got green, which will change the feel of the steering, the throttle response, and a few other things as well. Currently in automatic mode, and actually the gearbox is doing a fine job. The car is quite pleasant, if a little springy. It's sat on lowered springs, front and rear, with adjustable camber plates up front to give it about 2 degrees negative camber. From the factory, the rear has about that much, so it didn't feel like there was really much to do. You've also got lightweight wheels with Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2 tyres. They're sticky indeed. You've got uprated discs and pads, although they're Tarox pads on here currently, and Archie does not rate them. He said he did one track day and they were toast, so he's going to be trying something else. He's had some success with Ferodo pads in the past, but is going to try something else next, perhaps Mintex. If anyone's got any suggestions, please pop down in the comment section below and we'll see if they work any better. There are a few cosmetic tweaks on the exterior, a couple of little flashes of red, and it does look rather nice. On the interior, it's all largely standard, barring the lack of rear seats, which saved about 30 kilos. A foam pad has been put back in there to try and keep the noise down, and it is a very noisy car. This road noise is pretty bad, and that is an issue that's been caused in part by the removal of the seats. Archie did actually have a John Cooper Works GP3 on order, but when he looked at the specs and what you get, he wasn't that impressed, particularly by the fact that the strut brace in the rear is apparently not even structural. It's just there for show. That seems to be nearly dangerous, because you can imagine someone trying to use that to mount some harnesses on, and that would end very badly. With the tuning box, the power of this car is also then going to be very similar to that of the GP, and as this thing just tools around Knockhill and is perfectly enjoyable as it is, you didn't really see any reason to upgrade. As with just about everything, it would seem, in the last few months, prices of these have held firm, or in some cases gone up. And so to get something a bit like this, you'd be looking to part with around £25,000. That means it's about the same money as the 987.2 Cayman I just jumped out of. Inside, the overall impression is of certainly a higher quality car than those before it. You've got some softer plastics and vinyls and things, and in a Mini, I'm fine. I don't expect a really lush interior, but for 25 grand, is this anywhere near as fun as a Porsche? This has historically been where Minis always punch above their weight. So let's find out. Hello, Talksteer, my old friend. It's a little bit squirrely when you put your foot down. Whether it's despite or because of the massive grip offered by those Cup 2 tyres, I'm not sure, but my life, you put your foot down and this thing just wanders all over the shop. In fact, even at higher speeds, we're doing the legal limit now, it really wants to move side to side, so you've got to be ready for it, and in some cases it can really catch you unawares. Because this is a modern car and faces all of the same emissions and noise regs as everything else, they don't sound anywhere near as raucous as they used to. You could once upon a time get a JCW exhaust to fit onto more or less any Mini that would make them sound like absolute chav wagons. In some ways I kind of prefer this approach, and if you are going to do a lot of track days, having a quieter car is definitely a benefit. Gearbox is actually pretty decent too. It doesn't slam the gears home like a dual clutch would, but it actually works better than you might think. They're pretty swift changes, you know, and this thing really digs in. Oh, it holds on for dear life, that's for sure. Crikey, oh blimey. I haven't gone through those bends in anything as quick as this all week. Once you do get up to about 60 odd mile an hour, the car's power deficit and presumably poor aerodynamics do start to work against it, whereas the Porsche seems to want to keep going, this does not. And it doesn't really feel like a proper sports car, of course not. The steering, I'm pleased to say, does retain a little bit of that sort of Mini keenness, that little scrappy-do feeling that you expect from these cars. However, it does feel just a little bit more treacly, a little bit firmer, more artificial than cars I've had previously. Those were just naturally really enjoyable. You've got to be really careful with this car, because every now and again, very minor steering input will produce rather dramatic results that you don't always expect. The suspension is certainly on the firm side. It never really quite finds its feet. The Cayman is certainly much more comfortable, and as a GT car, infinitely superior to this. I certainly wouldn't daily this, and Archie feels very much the same way. As a track tool, and to have fun in, it's great. Knockhill in particular, I'm sure, is a circuit that plays to this car's talents. You took it to somewhere like Silverstone, I think it would be rather lost. You can still place it on the road, and despite it having grown somewhat over previous generations, it's still a reasonably compact car. It means for sections like this, you can really have a lot of fun. Live out your Paddy Hopkirk fantasies at will. Just wish that gearbox was perhaps a touch more interactive. I feel like it's doing what I tell it, but because the whole thing's so muted, I'm just less aware of it. It's probably better than I'm giving it credit, in all honesty, but you just can't tell. Can't believe I'm saying this, but this is the sort of car that does make me miss the old snap, crackle and pop exhausts. Yep, those brakes have seen better days, that is for sure. Turning circle's pretty good, actually. The engine is also a little on the flat side. Response is good enough, but it just doesn't excite in the way that even the old turbocharged lump did. No doubting its effectiveness. This car weighs about 1,200 kilos, and you combine that with the best part of 300 horsepower. It's got enough pace for your average back road. That's a really good combo, actually. 300 horsepower, 1,200 to 1,300 kilos. That, to me, is the sports car recipe. That's all you ever need. Those tyres really are quite sticky. I can hear them picking up every single stone on the tarmac and slinging them at the bottom of the car. You get confidence with this thing. It's lacking, I would say, that real spark and fizz that some of the older cars have, but it brings with it just this real veneer of quality. It feels like such a better put together product than any of the Minis previously. And for 25 grand, it's a laugh. I even quite like these paddles. I think they may be aftermarket because you can see they're sort of big paddles on top of small paddles. Yo, dog, I heard you like paddles, so I got paddles for your paddles, yo. I am down with the kids. Never let it be said otherwise. Visibility all round, really quite good. These mirrors seem unnecessarily large, I have to say that. Of course, with the back seats gone, storage space is pretty decent, so you can rock up at any circuit with plenty of tyres and spares and fuel and everything in there. I'm actually really impressed with these seats as well. You would have thought for a track-orientated car that they'd have chucked some bucket seats in as one of the first things that they did, but actually, these do a really good job. I can see why Archie didn't feel the need to bother with the GP3. They also look like a bit much. Is it just me, or do they seem a touch try-hard? I know Minis are kind of meant to be that way a little bit, but I don't know. I like this car a lot. A heck of a lot. More so than I thought I might. I'm also very glad to say that once upon a time you could turn these on and it would have silly things come up and say maximum go-kart feel. That appears to have gone, and that's right, because that was an awful piece of marketing nonsense that this car simply didn't need. The fact is, if something has maximum go-kart feel, you don't need to tell people. They should just know. I bet you don't get in a Rolls Royce and you press a button and it goes maximum woofed. What is this, Crisis? So the Mini's grown up, but it still plays in a band. I like it. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.